BT News sat down with President Obama in an exclusive interview to address the issue of police mistrust in America. Mr. President, thank you for joining us.
Great to see you, Jay.
As the country knows, we are in a great deal of turmoil when we think about the names of Mike Brown, of Tamir Rice, of Eric Gardner, and even now of this young man in Phoenix.
Right.
The country is concerned about, can we trust police? Are we safe with police? This problem didn't begin under your watch.
Yeah.
This is incredibly persistent and pervasive.
Yeah.
But how much of it does your administration feel you're responsible for making an impact on?
Well, I think an enormous amount. Not just because, as president, you're always responsible for what happens in this country, and you got to be part of the solution, not part of the problem, but because of my particular experiences that I bring to this office. I had a group of young people come before we met, a wider group of civil rights leaders and law enforcement. Most of them were somewhere between 18 and 25. A couple of them were from Ferguson. And when they described their own personal experiences of having been stopped for no reason, or having generated suspicion because they were in a community that supposedly they didn't belong, my mind went back to what it was like for me when I was 17, 18, 20. And as I told them, not only do I hear the pain and frustration of being subjected to that kind of constant suspicion, but part of the reason I got into politics was to figure out how can I bridge some of those gaps in understanding so that the larger country understands this is not just a black problem or a brown problem, this is an American problem. So we take this very seriously. Eric Holder obviously takes it seriously. He's got a similar set of stories and experiences he can share. The fact is that what we've seen now on videotape, because it used to be folks would say, well, maybe blacks are exaggerating, maybe it was, some of these situations aren't what they describe. What we've now seen on television for everybody to see gives us an opportunity, I think, to finally have the kind of conversation that's been a long time coming.
How necessary are the protests that we're seeing all over the country? Peaceful protesters, young protesters, angry, frustrated protesters. How necessary are they to the process of moving the ball, of the policy ball, the legislative ball?
I think as long as they're peaceful, I think they're necessary. When they turn violent, then they're counterproductive. But
we can admit that the vast majority of these protesters are not violent.
Absolutely, and that's why I had them in the Oval Office, some of these folks who've been organizing these protests, because the old adage, power concedes nothing without a fight, I think that's true. But what's also true is that a country's conscience sometimes has to be triggered by some inconvenience, because I think a lot of people who saw the Eric Gardner video are troubled, even if they haven't had that same experience themselves, even if they're not African American or Latino. I think there are a lot of good, well-meaning people. I think there are probably a lot of police officers who might have looked at that and said, that is a tragedy, what happened, and we've got to figure out what happened, how to bring an end to these kinds of tragedies. But then attention spans move on, right? There's the next thing. There's some international crisis. There's something that happens here. And change doesn't really occur. And the value of peaceful protests, activism, organizing, is it reminds the society this is not yet done.